So I've got it on my heat plate just to get started, 70 degrees. And then I'm probably going to end up using my hot air station, but you just as easily can use a, I don't know, hair dryer or something like that. What do we got? You don't have to use gloves, but we will need this dude. By far the most difficult part with any iPad repair, if that's not a screen, is getting the screen off and not damaging the glass. It's really awesome. You want to avoid using metal on metal, because wherever you have essentially just metal and glass directly, you have the chance of cracking the glass. And this is kind of an expensive screen at the moment. But the name of the game is literally just going to be me going around, creating space. You can see it open right here, going in with your tweezers. There are thin and thick sections with this stuff. But generally, it's going to go something like this. There is a piece that stretches from here to here and then along the side. You want to be very careful because at least on pretty much all Face ID models, there is or specifically this model, I'll just say this, there's a flex cable that connects Face ID up here, and you can only open this screen maybe that far. As you can see, we have some wiggle room. The screen can flex a little bit. And if you need to, we just as easily can reposition and come in. So if all you have is a heat mat, that's fine. This is just going to take a little bit longer. I'm sort of cheating by using a heat gun. We're just reaching in.
So, first of all, if you've got this far and you think, hell no, I do mailings. Second, I also buy iPhones. Working, broken, whatever. Even if it looks like this, I'm still interested. Link in the description. Let's make a deal.
So at this point, I'm trying to think of a reference guide, something I might have. This is an iFixit Jimmy. The screen is open about that much. If you look down in there, right about here, that's where our Face ID flex is. As you can see, you don't want to open it more than about the length of an iFixit Jimmy. So the next trick that I have is you have a little bit of wiggle room. Let me just focus in again. But if it's heated up properly, you can sort of... So I'm pushing this screen down ever so slightly. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little bit of a gap right here. And then we're almost to the charging port and it broke. Lovely. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. So I'm gonna heat this up right now, but I'm pushing on the screen up. Boom. Heated up and then just gave way and broke. Sometimes when you get to this point, you can just pull this way on the screen. As you can see, it's pretty convenient to have a heat gun. So now this one's done. And voila. So now my screen is free. The next thing that we need to do is very important. We're going to tilt it like so. We're then going to come in with our Phillips. We have two Phillips right here. There's this little bracket here. And then it's this flex cable just comes undone. And then our screen sort of folds open like a book. So I guess in Apple's infinite wisdom, they just used tape, I guess. So before we go disconnecting any of these flexes, it's really important to disconnect your battery. So what that does is it isolates it, because on iPhones and on some other devices, the battery is a physical connector. In this case, the board essentially lays on top of the connector and you just need to separate it. So this is a battery isolator, even though you're not technically disconnecting it. We just use our spudger. Now, before I continue, I'm going to clean up my frame. So we just need I use a chisel. So this is a 17. You can also use a 17A, which is a little bit more narrow, but we're just gonna go around the perimeter. Now's the time. I'm gonna mention, I made another video, pretty short. It's kind of just general, but it goes over some just best practices for how to properly prep an iPad frame for putting a new screen, or putting your screen back on. Generally, I try to avoid getting a blade anywhere close to the Face ID components. Once we're here, we'll come in with a alcohol pad. I like to wring out and get rid of some of the excess liquid, because 70% pads tend to, you don't want to get that whatever juice on the components. So next, I use this stuff called primer. I don't know if you can see it. You can probably see it from there. Primer 94. Get a Q-tip. They do sell this in little sticks. Essentially what this stuff does is it makes it so that the adhesive sticks better. So you're less likely to have the screen, lift up from the frame. And then I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna apply some in just a few places on the underside here. Don't go crazy. So you don't wanna get it on our LCD, because you can leave spots on your LCD. So we're gonna call that good. Next, I'm gonna come in with Tessa 61395, and you can probably see, but there are cutouts. So there's like a cutout there. It's annoying, but we're basically gonna add all these little individual sections.
So I'm using 2mm tape, and then you'll notice I'm doing this in roughly 12 different sections. That's just because of the random little cutouts on the iPad. Pretty much wherever there's a thinner section, there is something that's supposed to slot in there. So like up here, for instance, there are ambient light sensors near the corners. So you want to make sure that you leave room on the charging port. You can just do one long section. And same thing here. There are little magnets that you need to make room for. If you have any questions, just flip your screen upside down, hold it up to the edge, and you'll see.
This is nice. All right, so yeah, we're gonna have to, so where do I start? Remove this one first, and then you need to get past these two little tabs here, but you can sort of just nudge them out of the way. We don't even need to disconnect or remove this. We just want to sort of fold this back. Here is our button. I'm gonna take a file to these corners. Once again, all tools that I'm using there will be links for. There are these two little ridges on each side. This is what keeps the button this is what keeps the button from moving out that way, from basically just falling forward. So you don't want to go crazy or else you're just going to have to replace the button. But a lot of the times we need to file out the inside of this. So we're going to use this dude. And a lot of this is more of sort of an art than a science. So it's file, and then pop it back in, and then try. If it doesn't work, just keep at it. So with this one, it's almost like this is bent a little bit. Yeah, so this thing you can see is, like here, it would almost be like a smiley face ever so slightly. So the issue in this case is actually not with All right, so this is good because now this button has free movement, so that's good. So I'm gonna see if we can get away with just using this as is. So I might be tempting fate here, but I wanna, it works, but you have to press dead center, whereas a lot of the times you have a little bit of play on each side of the button, which I think has something to do with how far it was jammed in, for how long it was. It deformed the plastic. So I'm gonna see if I can't heat up this plastic and then sort of reshape it ever so slightly. I mean, the worst case scenario here is we can probably just find another one of these. I think that looks good. That's lovely. Oh. Oh, that's a lot better. So I can't overstate how gentle you need to be if you're gonna heat up that button, because you just as easily could melt it. All right, peel this sucker back. We're gonna come back with our isolation tool. Gonna grab our screen. If you can, rest it against something. I'll redo this because apparently I was zoomed out the whole time. But if you can, on these, generally on wider or larger flexes, I like to press on one side and then the other as opposed to pressing dead center, as you can accidentally All right. Then we're gonna remove our isolator. We're gonna connect our battery. I'm aware my Face ID, I just wanna make sure that everything functions. This might be dead. It is super dim because I do not have the ambient light sensor Face ID Flex. But I charged it up, left it on overnight. Battery's not draining super fast. And the power button works, and it works a lot better after I reshaped it. So, without further ado, there is an orientation to this bracket. There's sort of a little shelf on this side. You don't want to, if you put it the other way, you could accidentally sever these flex cables, or you could sort of wear them down over time. From here, this is where it gets slightly tricky. So we're first going to start off by turning off the device. And next, this is probably the easiest way that I'll be able to actually film this. But basically, you want to stretch this out without tearing it. And then you want to sort of just finagle this in place. I'm doing a good job. I'm trying to do a good job of showing this on both angles, so I like literally can't see what I'm doing. It's a little bit easier to do it that way than this way, but once you do, the taller screw is up top. And for the last time, before I remove my adhesive, we're gonna make sure that Face ID works, or that the ambient light sensor works. Yeah, it does. So it's not a bad idea. I don't actually know the customer's passcode, but generally, if you can touch 1 and 9, if you're a repair shop, something that I do when I remember is I get people to turn on the assistive touch, because then you can sort of drag that little home button thing all around and you get an idea of the touch functionality without actually asking for the person's code, which I used to, but not anymore. Now, this next part is slightly tricky, but as we are confined, if we only had the LCD flexes, this would be a lot easier. But because we have this up here, we can't open it all the way. You got to be pretty tricky, and you essentially have to open the device parallel and then take out, I think it's like 12 of these things. Now, this is a moment of truth, because you sort of have to rotate it upwards, and you want to do all of that without touching any of these sides. All right, now that's all out. So I like to align up top. And you press down. If you want to give it, go the extra mile, we can put it back on our heat plate. As you can see, I'm working on another device. But I'm gonna do exactly that. Yeah, so a few minutes, and then lay a jug of water on it like that. And then after a few minutes, I'll turn it off, and then the adhesive will have cured.